It's the last ball of the over, 193 for 5. And goes green, bowl short again. Bairstiow ducks underneath it. So we're in that passage of... Oh, hang on. Now, this is interesting. Bairstow's walked out of his crease. You're thinking it's the end of the over. Carey has flung the stumps down from long range. I must admit, I was about to hand over to Jim there. It felt like it was the end of the over to me, which is what Bairstow's going to say. He's leaning on his bat, looking dismayed. There's no doubt he's out of his ground because he's coming up to prod the pitch and talk to Ben Stokes. This might not be very well received if it's given out, I'll be honest.
Did the umpire call over?
Well, that's what we don't know. But Bairstow just ducked. They're having a conversation about this. Travis Head's involved, but Jonny Bairstow will say he assumed that was the end of the over, ducked underneath it, and he's walked up to go and do what you do between overs. This won't go down very well if this is given out.
But was he in his crease? If he went back in, if he was out of his crease,
he's ducking. He looks up at the bowler, scrapes at his ground, walks out, and the stumps are thrown down behind him. Well, let me tell you, we don't know what the umpire called.
But that throw was on its way before he left the crease, though, wasn't it?
He's back in his ground. He ducks underneath it. He looks up at the bowler, stands there for a minute. He scrapes at the ground, walks out to go and assume that's the end of the over, and the stumps are thrown down behind him. This will be ugly. This will be ugly.
Come on now.
And I wonder...
You're already giving it daggers.
Well, he's out of his ground.
Well, it depends on when they called over.
He's going to be given... He's out. That is going to go down really badly. Bairstow stalks off. He's had a word there with the Australians going past. They could have withdrawn the appeal, and they've chosen not to. Jonny Bairstow assumed that was the end of the over. He's walked out of his ground. Carey's thrown the stumps down behind him. Look at Stokes. He's talking to the umpires. He's not happy at all. And you can hear the chanting going around. That's not going to go down well. Glenn, you talk about that, and then Allison's coming in here.
Yeah, throw me in the deep end there, Agus. But it all depends on when the umpire called over then. You know, Carey threw that ball at the stumps before Bairstow had even left. And here we go. We'll get a different view of it. Ducks under it. He just throws it. Interesting. Not sure what to say with that. Ali?
Was the ball dead?
Well, if the ball...
You could say if the ball isn't dead, is it lack of game awareness and just a little bit of laziness from Bairstow that's cost him? He tapped his toe against the crease as if to say, well, I've decided the ball is dead, but I mean, it's not going to go down well. I go back to a similar incident it was a test match between England and India. Ian Bell, I remember, wandered out of his crease thinking it was tea, and India effected a run out. Now, MS Dhoni eventually did withdraw the appeal. I believe it was actually overturned during the tea break in that particular instance, but it was a similar instance of almost the batter deciding the ball's dead and it's the end of the over, rather than waiting to be absolutely certain. So, I mean, by the letter of the law, if that ball's not dead, the umpire hasn't considered it to be dead in the end of the over, then that does have to be given out. But it does not look or feel right. But, as a batter, you've got to have that game awareness.
Well, you do, and Alex Carey grabbed the ball and in the motion threw it in one go.
Yeah, it wasn't as if he waited and he paused, almost to sort of trick Bairstow into wandering out of his crease, did he? That is a good point. It was a take and an immediate underarm throw. But it's ramped things up a little bit here, hasn't it? Because England are suddenly 6 down, and this will again be another incident which will be talked about and talked about.
What a moment of controversy that was when Bairstow, as he just wobbled out of his crease, he clearly thought, I'm sure it was the end of the over, and at the time he did that, Carey was rolling the ball. It hit the stumps. The umpire obviously hadn't called over, and the Australians didn't withdraw the appeal, as perhaps in the situation they would have been better to do. And there has been some drama theatre here as the players go off for lunch. You can hear the boos. Quite a hostile reaction to what they've seen. They don't like it. And you could hear from the effects mic there that Stuart Broad doesn't like it. He's looking back at the Australian players. There's a bit of an exchange going on as they walk off the field. And you can quite clearly see that Broad is engaging with the Australian players here, and you can only guess that it's all about that run out of Bairstow. Was that in the spirit of the game? Why didn't you fellas withdraw the appeal? And it will go on. So Australia, I think, are going to gather up and go as a collective into the pavilion. They're bound to get a raspberry or three when they go in. Stokes will get plenty of applause as he goes up, but the boos are around the ground in this extraordinary session of play, and it's all been triggered by a moment, just a little moment in the game, and a wicket that a lot of people will feel that should not have been taken by Australia because it was against the spirit of the game.
What's it like downstairs? Go on, Mel. What's it like in the press box? It's a bit lively up here.
Oh,
Are you speaking an English voice or an Australian
hang
accent?
on, sorry,
Mel?
wait a minute. Which passport? Which passport? You did tell me if
You could speak as an Aussie.
You said if I came in here with my Australian passport that I was not welcome. So let me just think about that. I think so much has happened in this test. So much has happened. So I just think everyone downstairs is just like, well, give up. If we can't, so much is going on. And, you know, there was immediately people down there going, well, you know, it's out. And others going, yeah, don't like it. So like everything else, it's probably going to take over the day.
Right. Jonathan, come on. What did you make of all of that? And what was the atmosphere like around you and the journos when that happened? How do you feel about it as well?
Well, I mean, there's like Mel says, there's been so much happening this test. You know, it was only 4 days ago that Jonny Bairstow carried a Just Stop Oil protester over the boundary. I feel certain I read about it in Wisden or something.
Yeah, we forgot about that.
No, I mean, I think there was a lot of laughter because it is objectively, if you take off your England hat, it is quite funny that happened. If it happened to any other player but Bairstow, like an Australian or an Indian player, I think we'd find that quite funny. And it is controversial. Bairstow should not have been walking out of his ground, and I think it's kind of symbolic of the way England have tried to almost act as if rules don't apply to them, and obviously that's created some fantastic cricket, but also it's reality has come back to bite them a little bit.
Yeah. Editor of Wisden. Well, I believe you're writing a powerful thought piece about this.
You'd think I know the laws, wouldn't you? My first instinct was it was dozy by Bairstow. My second instinct, I turned around and saw Fraser Stewart, who writes the laws for MCC, and I went up to him and said, "Does a batter have to be attempting a run to be run out?" He said, "No, it's nothing to do with that. It's essentially whether the umpires decide the ball is dead or not." So I looked it up. Here we have Law 20.2. Ball finally settled. Whether the ball is finally settled or not is a matter for the umpire alone to decide. And it was clear that Carey didn't think the ball was settled. I mean, had he held on to it for, say, 2 seconds, yes, I think you could argue the ball was dead and Bairstow should have left his crease. But it was almost in one go. He took it, and he'd spotted that Bairstow had been leaving his crease earlier in his innings. And you could say it's a smart piece of thinking. He's a smart keeper. You know, he stood down the leg side for the ducket catch slightly, almost anticipating that short ball. Yes, some people say it's sharp practice. I don't think I've ever heard Lord shout, "Same old Aussie's always cheating." No. That felt like Edgbaston. But my first thought was it's dozy by Bairstow. So why even give the Australians a chance to do it?
So the call of over or not is irrelevant, actually. It's a case of whether the ball is considered dead.
The umpires have to decide it's
a grey area, yeah.
And they clearly didn't. Yeah. So he's out, I'm afraid.
What about the spirit of the game? Why has Stuart Broad come out like a raging bull? Why has Ben Stokes gone wild? Why 20-odd thousand people shouting, cheating them?
Well, because that dismissal falls into the category of dismissal that some players hate, especially English players. They don't like the run out at the non-strikers end, for example. What people call the mankad, which people get angry about using that phrase. So it falls precisely into that category. It enrages an idea, which I've always thought was a nebulous concept anyway, the spirit of cricket. Why have a set of laws if you've also got this kind of spirit that sits above it? I think that's the problem that cricket often gets into. And it's happened precisely with this. Look, Stokes was fired up, wasn't he? Because he then moves to his 100 almost unnoticed with 3 successive sixes. When he hit the third one, I was on the phone to my office and I said, "Oh, he's actually just got to his 100," because everyone was talking about the run out. So maybe it's poke the beast. You know,
Yeah.
maybe Australia will regret it.
Well, do you think the beast was poked last night with that catch, and the Aussies feel a bit raw about that, and you know, whatever you think about that, the Mitchell Stark one? I mean, do they feel they were poked last night, and therefore they think the gloves are off?
I definitely think they do. I mean, I don't know about you, but my Twitter has just gone nuts because I put up the actual law for the catch. And that has obviously got a lot of people quite cranky.
Right. Which way, though? What's been the majority view of that, then?
Well, personally, I thought it was a pretty easy decision for the umpire to make if you look at the laws. And a lot of people, even Australians, have been coming back to me and saying, well, you know what, you're taught from a young age, if you're diving or sliding, taking a catch, make sure you keep the ball off the ground.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people saying that, but you know what it's like. But a lot of other people saying something else. But players are going to use anything like that to fire themselves up, right? So in the way that we've just seen Bairstow, after the Bairstow run out, what Stokes has done, yes. I would say that the Australian players will be using, you know, the Nathan Lyon coming out and batting the way he did, and then Mitchell Stark taking that catch and then having it been deemed not a catch. Of course they're going to use it. They'll use whatever they can. It was interesting seeing Stuart Broad then have a go there, because they'll use that. They'll use that as well. That's just what they do. But I was just saying to the other guys here, I have never heard anything like that at Lord's, the booing. I've never heard it here. It may have happened before, but like when Steve Smith was here last time in 2019, all of that, when Mohammed Amir was booed, I've never heard anything like what I just heard then.
It was very vocal. Jonathan, was the bear prodded last night, or what are your thoughts on that catch, and then whether that has had anything to do with what's spilled over today?
Yeah, I mean, it's telling for two reasons, really. First of all, that Australia didn't even think about withdrawing the appeal. It wasn't even a possibility to them. And I think they don't like England. I don't think they like this England team. They don't like the kind of the mantras that they've come out with. And I think that was a bit of a tell that there is more needle than I think England realised. And England now have, you know, if they didn't know they were in an Ashes contest before, they really do now. With everything that comes with it, they now have, you know, they're probably still going to go 2-0 down. Yeah. But now they have this kind of betrayal myth. They have this idea that they were kind of cheated out of it. And, you know, they've also had a bit of fun with Stokes this morning. So I think it's, weirdly, it might actually help them, because going 2-0 down and getting bowled out for 200, that's a kind of a damp squib of a series. Now there's, you know, even though they're 2-0 down, there's a bit of needle to it.
Australian management has requested the Marylebone Cricket Club investigate several incidents involving spectators in the members area during lunch. On the fifth day, it's alleged that players and staff from the Australian team were verbally abused, with some being physically contacted as they made their way to lunch through the members area. An MCC spokesman has said the long room is unique in world cricket, and the great privilege of players passing through the pavilion is very special. After this morning's play, emotions were running high, and words were unfortunately exchanged with some of the Australian team by a small number of members. We have unreservedly apologised to the Australian team, and we will deal with any member who has not maintained the standard we expect through our disciplinary processes. It was not necessary to eject anyone from the ground, and I'm pleased to say there was no repeat of this as the players resumed the field for this afternoon's session. So there we go. Well, emotions were running high everywhere, all around the ground, and including, it seems, in the long room too. And there is a camera there, and so we were watching actually from here as the Australians walked off, and you could certainly tell from here that there was silence. Normally the players would be applauded back into the pavilion at a close of play or an interval, something like that. But that was not the case. There was silence, all because of that dismissal of Jonny Bairstow. And it's interesting, and it's sort of been pushed away that at the moment. You know, people are just so focused on the game and the way it's going and Stokes' innings and the drama that we're watching. But it'll come back at the end of the game. There's no question about that.
It's ironic that the incident's actually triggered Ben into playing the way that he's played.
Absolutely. It's an innings fueled by anger.
Absolutely. And he's got Stuart Broad out there that we just know he just loves the drama and the stage, and he's played a great role so far. So it's actually brought us this. Yeah. It's brought us this great dramatic moment.
Well, Pat, Good afternoon. I just wonder what you make of some of the reaction around the ground to that.
I don't know, everyone seems pretty passionate. I thought it was a fantastic game. Again, just like Edgbaston. Not much more to say on it.
Yeah. Let's go then. Jonny Bairstiow, let's go straight in. Do you have any regrets about not withdrawing the appeal there?
No.
Do you understand why people around the ground were booing and didn't like that decision?
I think it's a rare dismissal, but no, I don't think there was anything untoward. I don't think there was anything sneaky about it. Kez caught it, threw it straight at the stumps. You know, Jonny was leaving his crease every ball. It's a tactic you see Jonny when he's keeping used quite often. So, no surprises.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. So actually it was kind of planned, was it? Because he was leaving his crease?
No, he just did it 4 or 5 balls, previous. So it was pretty clear. You're meant to stay in your crease in cricket. Jonny's obviously tried it against a lot of our guys over the years. So, I guess, stay in your crease.
Ben Stokes said he would have withdrawn the appeal. I guess he just different, is it?
Okay.